Breaking news this Thursday night, the high-flying anxiety to stop a strike at WestJet. The airline and the mechanics union ordered into arbitration.
We had to see what the situation at the time.
What affected passengers are now entitled to. The federal dental care program expands. Who's just become eligible and who's unhappy about the plan and why. Swallowed up. See this stunning moment. Part of a soccer field caves in. And celebrating a pioneer of pride.
John was a visionary.
The immeasurable legacy of John Banks.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. It has been a tense time for WestJet passengers with another strike deadline looming. More flights were canceled preemptively today, the second time that's happened in weeks, leaving passengers in the lurch ahead of the Canada Day long weekend. Then late today, a development. The federal Labour Minister has stepped in, Seamus O'Regan imposing final binding arbitration on the airline and the mechanics union, saying in a statement the parties still remain far apart today and tensions have only increased since last Tuesday. Heather Yourex-West is following developments in Calgary. Heather, what is the union's response to these developments?
Well, Donna, the president of AMFA, the unions, told me last week that it did not want to see this process head to binding arbitration. And in a statement this afternoon, the union pointed out that the board has only stepped in 7 times in the last 45 years. WestJet, however, taking a different approach. It says that the government's actions today has saved the summer travel plans for many Canadians. There will be no strike this weekend. No doubt a huge relief to the more than 250,000 people WestJet said had been scheduled to take flights over the long weekend.
And Heather, for people who have WestJet tickets for flights in the days and weeks ahead, it then looks at this stage like they don't have to worry?
Yeah, there should be some relative confidence that if you are scheduled to fly with WestJet, that your flight will not be impacted by this labor dispute anyways. However, there have been some disruptions in anticipation of this strike. About 30 flights were canceled in anticipation. WestJet said that those were necessary in order to safely ground the fleet. The good news is WestJet is required by law to compensate those passengers for rebooking costs.
WestJet has to attempt to rebook the passengers on one of WestJet's own or its partner's flights that departs within 9 hours of the original departure time. Meals and accommodation, and lump sum compensation up to $1,000, depending on how long the delay costs to the passenger.
Now, WestJet says it is now working to ramp up operations as soon as it can. There will be no additional cancellations as a result of this dispute. In total, though, about 3,300 passengers have been impacted by those preemptive cancellations. But again, that is just a fraction of the more than 250,000 passengers that would have been disrupted had this strike gone ahead. Donna?
All right, Heather Yourex-West at Calgary International Airport. Thanks. Another phase of the National Dental Care Program was rolled out today. Both the Liberals and New Democrats take political credit for the move, aimed at helping more low-income and vulnerable Canadians get dental care. Yet there is still lingering confusion and some frustration by both dentists and patients over how the coverage actually works. David Akin explains.
This is an opportunity of a lifetime to advance oral health care.
Health Minister Mark Holland and 10 of his cabinet colleagues held press conferences across the country Thursday to announce that children in low-income households and those with disabilities are now eligible for coverage in the federal dental care plan. But today's announcements were also a chance to make a coordinated PR push to regain political momentum after the Conservatives' big win in a by-election Monday in the former Liberal stronghold of Toronto-St. Paul's.
Watching the Conservatives win in St. Paul means that, like, everything we're working on could be thrown in a trash bin. And that doesn't worry me because I'm a Liberal. That worries me because I'm a Canadian.
To me, the stakes have never been higher. I have never wanted to work harder with my caucus and in my community.
And Jagmeet Singh even tried to claim some political credit, arguing it was the NDP who pushed the minority Liberals on dental care.
We can get stuff done, and we got things done. And we got things done with just 25 MPs. And I want folks to know, look at what we did with our power.
But the program may not be the political winner the Liberals and New Democrats are hoping for. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said this week Alberta will withdraw from the program by 2026 because she says, quote, it unnecessarily replicates provincial plans, even though 100,000 Albertans have already signed up under the federal plan. But the bigger problem may be dentists themselves. The program is not easy to access or administer and does not cover the full costs of providing treatment, said the New Brunswick Dental Society. It doesn't meet the promises the federal government has made to Canadians, said Alberta dentists. BC dentists are concerned about the government's lack of clarity and collaboration. Holland, the health minister, acknowledged the problems and said he's ready to negotiate with premiers like Smith and with dentists' organizations to make the program work better and, Liberals hope, earn some political rewards if they do. Donna.
All right, David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Canada's former Defence Minister Harjit Sajjan is responding to allegations first reported in the Globe and Mail that he instructed Canadian Special Forces to rescue 225 Afghan Sikhs during the fall of Kabul in 2021, people with no ties to Canada. The report says military sources claim that took resources away from attempted rescues of Canadian citizens from Afghanistan and Afghans who have ties to Canada. Sajjan rejects allegations he did anything improper.
Because I'll be honest with you, it was utter BS. To read that story and to take some of these questions, given that it was a approved government policy that we were executing, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I would be getting those questions if I wasn't wearing a turban.
In a statement, Sajjan says he did not order Special Forces to mount a rescue mission, nor were the Sikhs given help over priority groups. He says he only relayed information given by a non-governmental organization through the appropriate chain of command. Sajjan added that the group of Sikhs was near Kabul's airport at the time. They were among vulnerable groups eligible to be evacuated by Canada, but efforts to help them were ultimately unsuccessful. November seems a long way off, but the two men who are vying to be the U.S. president are in full campaign mode already. And tonight, U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will face each other for a debate. The political attacks began long before either man took to the stage. Jackson Proskow explains why tonight's debate is unprecedented and what's at stake.
Never has a presidential debate looked like this, a sitting president versus a former one. A rematch few Americans seem to want.
I think what both candidates are hoping for is that the other guy is a caricature of who they want the other guy to be. Right? That Trump is as out there and loony and crazy, and that Biden is as out of touch and incoherent.
President Joe Biden has spent a week doing traditional debate preparation with top advisors at Camp David.
Should I be tough and nasty?
While former President Donald Trump suggested there's no need to prepare and has instead been spreading baseless claims that Biden's performance will be boosted by drugs.
He's going to be so pumped up.
Like the debate itself, Trump's conspiracy theories are a repeat of 4 years ago.
People say he was on performance-enhancing drugs.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
the question is the question is
Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen.
During their last debate in 2020, it was hard for either man to get a word in. This time around, microphones will be muted when a candidate's time expires. There will be no audience, just two old foes and two moderators in an otherwise empty CNN studio.
This debate is really about that 8%, maybe 9% of American voters who are not yet decided.
Short of a disastrous performance, the potential impact is itself debatable. Neither man needs an introduction to voters. Most people already have an opinion. Any post-debate dip or bump in the polls is virtually meaningless 130 days out from the election.
You have a whole summer of Donald Trump and Joe Biden to come, and the numbers will fade.
The big unknown is how the unusual debate rules and lack of audience will impact the candidates' performances. Both men, for very different reasons, have to counter perceptions that they're unfit for the job. Their rhetoric may not be as important as how they address the very real-world problems that many American voters are experiencing. Donna?
Jackson in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. The U.S. Supreme Court has pushed its decision on Trump's legal immunity case until after tonight's debate, but it did issue three major decisions today. In a 5-4 vote, it struck down a controversial settlement for OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma. The agreement would have provided billions of dollars to combat the opioid epidemic and help its victims, but the deal also shielded the family who owns the company, the Sacklers, from future lawsuits. The Sacklers had agreed to pay $6 billion in exchange for sweeping protections and the ability to restructure. The U.S. government challenged that deal, arguing shielding the family, which made a fortune off opioids, was a misuse of the system. The Sackler family says they will continue to push for a settlement, claiming the alternative would be, in their words, costly and chaotic legal proceedings in courtrooms across the country. The U.S. Supreme Court has also dismissed an appeal on an abortion case from Idaho, a temporary win for abortion rights supporters that will allow women to receive emergency abortions despite the state's near total ban on them. Justices also blocked an environmental regulation aimed at curbing harmful air pollution that crosses American state lines. In Kenya, a day after the president gave in to pressure from protesters over his tax changes, people were back on the streets. Police used tear gas and rubber bullets to try to disperse angry crowds. The president's deeply unpopular bill to raise taxes was the trigger for the initial protests, but even though he's withdrawn them, the anger has not ended, and people are now demanding that the president resign. In Bolivia, at least 17 people have been arrested after what appeared to be a coup attempt yesterday. It all ended in a matter of hours, but why and how it happened is still being deciphered. Among those detained is a top military general who claims the whole thing was staged to boost the president's popularity. Redmond Shannon explains.
Bolivia is no stranger to coups. Few, though, have been as brief and bizarre as Wednesday's apparent attempt by its military to grab power. They failed, and just moments before General Juan José Zúñiga was arrested, he claimed the president had asked him to stage the coup.
Entonces es necesario preparar algo para levantar mi popularidad.
Zúñiga claimed President Luis Arce wanted something to boost his popularity. Seconds later, Zúñiga was taken into custody and then paraded before the media. Earlier in the day, Arce called for public support as soon as troops stormed the presidential palace. It brought crowds to the street, chanting in support of the president and challenging the soldiers. Footage has since emerged from the height of the commotion, supposed opponents Arce and Zúñiga meeting face to face. Opposition politicians say questions need to be answered about what went on. And on Thursday, a senior member of Arce's ruling socialists explicitly called it a planned coup led by the government. A sign of the deep divides that plague Bolivian politics ahead of next year's election. Former president and fellow socialist Evo Morales is planning a comeback for that, despite having reached his term limit. On Monday, Zúñiga had threatened he would arrest Morales if he tried to do so. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
The war in Ukraine soars to dangerous new heights. Coming up, how both sides are using commercial drones to defend themselves. Palestinians are fleeing parts of Gaza City as the Israeli military unleashed another round of intense airstrikes.
As you can hear, airstrike, as you can see.
Families ran for cover as Israeli strikes landed in an eastern neighborhood of Gaza City. The Israeli military wouldn't comment on the attacks, but it did order people in the neighborhood to leave. There are reports Israeli tanks were seen on the outskirts of the city. In the south, Israeli authorities say at least 19 sick children, along with their escorts, were part of the first medical evacuation out of Gaza since May. Those who cannot leave Gaza are more desperate than ever. Today, Palestinian health authorities say another child died of malnutrition. In Ukraine, the nation's Air Force says it shot down more than 20 drones and at least 5 missiles in multiple overnight attacks. Drones have never been used in conflict the way they are in Ukraine, and their use has evolved in ways that weren't even imagined just 2 years ago when the conflict began. Mike Armstrong explains how Kyiv has made drones a pivotal part of its war efforts and how it may change warfare for years to come.
The Ukrainian military has been outgunned, struggling for months with a shortage of ammunition and artillery shells. What's helped it hold back Russian forces was replacing conventional weapons with commercial technology. Drones that have taken to the skies over the front lines in Ukraine are basically the same platforms for sale in electronics stores, but turned into weapons of war. For as little as a few $100s, a small over-the-counter drone equipped with an explosive can destroy military equipment worth millions of dollars. Alexander Kamyshin is Ukraine's Minister of Strategic Industries.
This kind of things are significantly cheaper than other classic warfare tools. So actually that's the most efficient way how we can win this war.
Ukraine is betting big on drones. From a few domestic manufacturers just 2 years ago, there are now more than 200 companies churning out an estimated 150,000 drones a month. Ukraine's president set a goal in December to produce 1 million drones domestically in 2024. It's already past that, headed for 2 million. The ramping up and development that's gone on would normally take years.
This war has pushed that research, development, testing, and evaluation cycle into a matter of weeks, days, and sometimes hours.
From the first years of the conflict, both sides used aerial drones for surveillance. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, the evolution has sped up, from drones simply dropping bombs to first-person view FPV drones equipped with munitions that explode on impact. Drone units share videos online, both for fundraising and to instill fear. They want the enemy to know what they can do.
This war has been tick-tocked in a way that no other conflict has.
Ukraine has also developed long-range drones, equipping small aircraft with 300-kilogram warheads. It's allowed Ukraine to target energy and military infrastructure inside Russia.
Well, they shell us deep inside my country daily. We shell them as well.
Now, militaries around the world are watching the use of drones in the Ukraine war. The U.S. recently canceled the development of a new attack and reconnaissance helicopter. Even after spending $2 billion on the project, it decided the helicopter's role on the battlefield could be done by aircraft without people on board. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Caved in ahead the moment the middle of this soccer field collapsed. There's some incredible video of something that happened on a soccer field in Illinois. A sinkhole suddenly swallowed up the center of the field, stretching more than 30 meters across and 15 meters deep. The outcome could have been tragic had anyone been on the field at the time. This is when it happened. The park is now closed and an investigation is underway. It's believed the collapse is linked to a limestone mine directly below the field. Canadian rock legend Neil Young and his band Crazy Horse have abruptly taken a break from touring. All remaining stops on the Love Earth tour are cancelled, many of them in Canada. A statement on Young's website says a couple of the band members got sick after a show in Detroit last month and they've not fully recovered. The band says it will try to make up some of the dates that they'll miss. Out and proud next, how John Banks helped influence gay rights. Singer-songwriter Avril Lavigne is among 83 new appointments to the Order of Canada. Lavigne is recognized as a trailblazer for female punk rock artists. Other notable names honored include journalist Melissa Fung, who was kidnapped in Kabul while covering the war in Afghanistan in 2008, and Janine Fuller, who champions intellectual freedom and fights for LGBTQ2 rights. Another pioneer of gay rights in Canada passed away this week and is being honored today. John Banks organized the first Pride March in Montreal 45 years ago. He dedicated his life to LGBTQ2 activism and lived proudly as a gay man. Gloria Enriquez looks at his enduring legacy.
There was a time when celebrating being gay in Montreal was out of the question. In fact, it was criminal.
The mayor at that time was Jean Drapeau, and he wanted to clean the city.
But for Pierre Pilote's friend, John Banks, hiding in the closet was also out of the question.
Absolutely determined.
Determined to stand up to discrimination against gay people, Banks did something considered so defiant at the time, a gathering to celebrate being gay.
It's the first gay march in Montreal.
It was 1979. A group of about 50 friends Banks called the Pink Brigade met in Montreal's St. Louis Square. They walked to one of the local parks and simply celebrated who they were. Pilote says back then it took a lot of courage and guts, and Banks certainly had both. 45 years later, that small gathering has become the largest pride parade in the Francophone world. In Montreal, many say, a better place for it.
He was a pioneer.
A pioneer and a fan of culture. Banks' determination also led him to another improbable job. While actress Marlene Dietrich was on tour in Montreal, he wanted her to sign his records. But when she refused to sign one of them, he said,
"Well, Madame Dietrich, you did it, so sign it." And she said, "You, come in my lodge."
He became Dietrich's personal assistant. Banks, Pilote says, was larger than life.
We're going to miss him, that's for sure. Yeah, he was a great man.
Banks died at 80 years old. Despite the sadness, he would want those mourning his loss to do one thing.
Keep the queer parades going.
And to keep being out and proud. Gloria Enriquez, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the Terracotta Conservation Area in Caledon, Ontario. Thanks for watching. Carolyn Jarvis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.